Welcome once again to another edition of the Finance Forum. I'm Abdu-Raof Hanslo. Today we're honoured with another well-known presence in our hot seat, Mr. Mohammed Patel from NBI Risk Advisory Services, and today we're speaking medical aids, medical insurance and general medical cover. Assalamu alaikum to you, Mohammed.
Wa alaikum salam, Abdu-Raof. Thanks for having me on today.
No, we're always pleased to have specialists in specific fields in the hot seat. And I think today we touch on a topic that is very close to all of our hearts, and that being medical cover. So I think just to kick the questioning off from my side, I firstly want to ask medical cover in general. If you can give us a short synopsis of exactly what's out there and what options our community has as far as cover is concerned.
Abdu-Raof, it's a very wide question you've asked me, and effectively the universe that's available to average South Africans is vast. However, it's a universe that's very fragmented. So you've got options across various categories. So you've got different companies firstly, that's A. And within those various different companies, they operate in different markets. So you have a closed market and you have an open market. Open market being anybody can join an open medical scheme. So any man on the street can join any medical scheme. That's an open plan. A closed medical aid would be a medical aid that's more catered to specific industries or specific employer groups. And that effectively limits the choice for certain members. So they've got to be, if they're operating within a certain employer environment or specific segment of the market, they're only allowed to belong to certain medical schemes because those are specific to those employer groups. One of them may be the government employee marketplace, where most members are obliged to join a scheme called GEMS, Government Employee Medical Scheme. So they have an obligation to go into GEMS. So that's just a broad scenario of that. In terms of the choices available, there's a multitude of different choices. And I mean, the choices stem from traditional medical schemes, where we go into the old type of structure where all benefits were bundled as a grouping. And effectively, the scheme would set up the limitations of the different benefits, being GPs, hospitals, out-of-hospital benefits like dentistry and the like. And then you have your new generation products, where most of the day-to-day benefits are funded via savings accounts. That is the general structure of where we sit today. We do have an underlying structure where we have capitation products or network-based products, which has grown substantially in the market. And all the schemes have a capitation or a network-based product in effect. And that is basically to get on our segment of the market that haven't been able to afford medical aid. So typically, those products would be entry level. They'd also be salary banded in terms of how they structure themselves. So members that go on board, they'd pay according to what they earn. So typically, that has been the thrust of medical schemes for the last couple of years, and new membership has really come on board on the lower end of the market, or lower end of the spectrum. The upper end of the spectrum hasn't seen that much growth. It's been very stagnant over the last couple of years. We roughly sit with about 7 million South Africans on private medical coverage at this point in time.
Okay, so when speaking about private medical coverage, and that's not from your employee, how does one actually go about choosing a medical aid? And then further down from these, each medical aid scheme that we know of has various different options. So for a layman, this must be an extremely daunting task, to sit in front of an advisor and listen to all the jargon surrounding, you know how finance people are. So to listen to the jargon of all the various options, number one, and then all the various schemes available to them. How does one go about actually isolating the one that applies or the one that's most appropriate to me, and then also further on finding the correct option that's available to myself and my family?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Abdu-Raof, because obviously finding the correct advisor, a correct planner to assist you with finding a medical aid which is appropriate to you. So you've got to find a planner who's got your best interests at heart. He really wants to give you the choice He wants to give you the choice that's applicable to your family scenario. So when I sit with a client, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to look at the options in terms of the schemes that are available. So in terms of the open schemes, what is available? Well, there's a variety. I mean, we're looking at about 30 to 40 open schemes in the marketplace. Not all of them are schemes that I direct members into. Some of the questions we look at, or some of the factors we look at when we're choosing a scheme, and that's not the specific option, but just the scheme itself. We've got to look at issues like solvency ratios, financial strength of the scheme, the numbers or the membership number that the scheme is sitting with, which is an important factor because smaller schemes are more likely to fold in time, where the larger schemes, due to the size of the schemes, the likelihood of larger schemes folding is quite unlikely. So it's your financial solvency, it's your financial reserves, effectively, it's your membership numbers, it's also your back office and the admin that the medical schemes can provide. And I think that's one of the factors that gets neglected when people are choosing medical schemes. Most members choose medical schemes purely on price. Where I look at it, I look more on a consistency of the administration. What and how quickly are they able to turn around claims, pay claims, and effectively, from a rating perspective, we look at most schemes where their rating is in the 95 to 97% on an average basis. So your larger schemes have been able to put those kind of numbers together. Smaller schemes, unfortunately, due to liquidity issues, due to lack of reserves, due to lack of membership numbers, have sometimes struggled in that marketplace. So what we will see in terms of that is we will see a bit of amalgamation down the line. But effectively going back to, so we've chosen the scheme. We've chosen a scheme that's got a good rating, effectively it's strong, financially it's a strong scheme, so we know it's going to be around for the next 5 to 10 years. All right. That's the first leg. Second leg is, which plan do I choose? Well, that's a very personal issue, and that plan will vary from member to member, family to family. All schemes offer widespread of benefits or spread of options. So effectively, within any medical scheme, whether it's A, B, C, or D, they will all offer the same type of plans. Now we've got to drill down to the different benefits and say, well, in terms of chronic, this specific option on that plan gives you benefits that are appropriate for your specific chronic condition, and vice versa. We could have somebody who needs a specific oncology benefits. The base oncology will be covered, but you need specific extras on there, and a specific plan within a specific medical aid would maybe cover that to a greater degree than some of the other options. So that's where you drill down to the specific details of choosing a plan.
Now, I know you mentioned that there's so many schemes, and it's up to the individual, basically, which scheme fits right in. Now, in financial planning, obviously, we have something called needs analysis as well as a risk analysis. So, in this spectrum of medical aids, is there a tool like that can be used to apply and ascertain exactly which scheme would, number one, fit the candidate or the client, as well as the option on that specific scheme?
Yes, indeed, Abdu-Raof. Within our practice, we apply these tools. We have the needs analysis tool that we utilize. So when we're looking at an individual client, when the client comes in, we'll ask the questions, the relevant questions in terms of their needs, ascertain what their needs are, what their requirements are. And many times, there's a difference between a need and a want. Many people, when they sit down with us, they have wants. But you've got to break it down to the individual needs. And we take those needs and then we filter it into our needs analysis system. And that will then kick out a plan which is relevant for the specific member or applicable for the specific member. Effectively, within that needs analysis, it's needs in terms of hospital cover, needs in terms of chronic cover, day-to-day cover. Those are the needs. Then also, in terms of filtering the process, will you be happy with utilizing any specific hospital, or are you more likely to use specific private hospitals? Those are some of the questions that come into play. With a chronic situation as well, are you a chronic sufferer, yes or no? All schemes are obliged to cover for chronic, but to a greater or lesser degree. And that's also some of the questions that crop up in our needs analysis. Once we've finalized our needs analysis, it'll kick out a recommendation which would then apply to the member. And that's the process that we follow in terms of putting members on.
Now you touched on something earlier as well, and that being the difference between the new age medical aid and the traditional medical aid. Now, in my mind, the way I think about new age being the new options, the newer types of medical aids at least, and then traditional being the older type, the medical aids that we were used to when we were growing up. So could you briefly just touch on the differences between the two, and then also to maybe just comment on if the traditional medical aids are being phased out and being replaced by the new age options, and in your opinion, which one's better?
I think, Abdu-Raof, once again, a very loaded question in terms of which one's better. So I'm going to start at the tail end there. But going back to it, new age or new generation products and traditional products. New generation's a misnomer because it's now running for over 20 odd years. So effectively, it's not new any longer. It's just become the way a lot of schemes are doing things. The traditional medical aid, and that's what we would know being going on to medical aid as children and the like, those effectively built a basket of benefits for a member. So effectively, for your day-to-day benefits, they would give you a stack of benefits, and they'd set it according to specific parameters, and every family had that parameter. The unfortunate scenario with those types of medical aids were benefits were not carried over if they were not utilized in a calendar year. So they were very rich in terms of benefits, but if a member didn't utilize all their benefits in a calendar year, unfortunately, those benefits fell away. So in terms of the value proposition for a lot of members, it lacked a bit of value. However, it was rich in terms of benefits. From a pricing point, they also come in a lot more expensive. New generation products basically tell you, we give you a private medical aid, we provide for your hospital cover, we provide for your chronic cover, your day-to-day cover effectively is being funded by yourself. So either you have no savings, so you have a hospital and chronic benefit medical aid, or you have a hospital, chronic, and a savings account built into your plan. Savings account technically is your own money. For a lot of the younger members, those types of plans have been very attractive because effectively if they're not using their savings, they would carry it over. However, in most instances, people don't carry over their savings because they're exhausted by the middle of the year, 3/4 into the year, or the end of the year. So they don't end up carrying over. However, from a pricing point, it is a lower pricing point for most members. And from scheme perspective, they're abdicating the responsibility of day-to-day benefits and putting it into a savings account, and the member manages that savings account. So it has its pros and its cons on both sides. For myself, my personal view is that the new generation, from a sustainability perspective, is more sustainable. In terms of the traditional products, they're less sustainable going down the line. That we're seeing in some of the schemes that are struggling with solvency and with operating margins or operating losses, in that traditional schemes are quite a burden on medical aids.
You're watching the Finance Forum. In the hot seat today is Mohammed Patel from NBI Risk Advisory Services. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.